I thought I'd start out today by just letting everyone know what I'm going to have for breakfast, because that's certainly something a lot of people are interested in, is how do we eat, what sort of food do we eat. And so I've prepped my breakfast that I'll eat in a little while. Today I'm going to have a smoothie with a bowl of fruit. So my smoothie I made with 3 frozen bananas because I didn't have any ripe ones on the shelf, and 1 date and about 100 grams of blueberries and 25 grams of baby spinach and a teaspoon of chai powder and a big handful of ice to help blend up the greens and make it all nice and smooth. And I also added a teaspoon of tahini as well. So that's in the smoothie. And then I'm going to have the smoothie with a bowl of delicious ripe fruit, figs and peaches. So I've got 3 peaches and 3 figs in there, I think, and just a little sprinkle, about a teaspoon of some flaked almonds as well for a little bit of crunch. I like a bit of texture with my breakfast, so I'm going to have that soon. So today, the last couple of days I've talked about the dairy industry and the egg industry, and given that they're sort of major reproductive kind of parts of the animal, I thought today I'd talk a little bit more about reproduction with regards to humans, so pregnancy and lactation, and eating a vegan diet while you're either pregnant or lactating, nursing a baby. So one of the things that came out of the What the Health documentary that you may not be aware of is a chemical called dioxin. So dioxin is produced by things like waste burning incineration processes and the paper industry and chemical and herbicide production. And it's very abundant in our environment. It's pretty much everywhere, and it ends up in the oceans, it ends up in the soil, and the problem with it is it's one of those toxins that bioaccumulates. So by that I mean, instead of it just staying in the water or staying in the grass, it actually is hydrophilic, so it prefers to be in fat, and therefore it goes up the food chain and ends up in animal tissue. So it is considered by the EPA to be one of the most toxic chemicals known to man, and it is linked with diseases like cancer, as well as a number of other diseases. Reproductive issues are one of them, so endometriosis, difficulty falling pregnant or maintaining a pregnancy, changes in testosterone levels, as well as having big effects on the immune system and even causing things like behaviour changes and learning difficulties. So it's a pretty nasty chemical. It was actually included in the Agent Orange herbicide. It was the major component of that chemical that was used during the Vietnam War, and so it's pretty nasty stuff. And the main source of dioxin that you can eat is animal products because of that bioaccumulation aspect. So fish or any seafood product, dead animal tissue, so your steak or your bacon, and any sort of secretion of the animal, so your dairy products, milk and cheese. That's the major source for dioxins in the human body. And there's no safe level of dioxin. They don't consider it to be something that's, safe in moderation. It's not. It's actually, once it's in your system, it's really, really difficult to get rid of, and it's very likely going to be causing some sort of disease at some point. There's actually no way of excreting it if you're a man. You basically just need to wait for it to break down over time. Sort of every chemical has a natural half-life, and so it will eventually break down and will no longer be a persistent chemical in your system, but that takes a long time. The scary thing for me, and this was in the What the Health film, and I found this scene really quite disturbing. Women have 2 ways of excreting dioxin, either through the placenta and into a baby, so they concentrate it into the baby's tissue, or through the breast milk and into the baby that way. And so all of the babies that are born to mothers that are eating animal products are highly contaminated with a really toxic chemical that's probably going to cause a wide range of health issues. So that that actually made me quite teary when I watched that in What the Health, because I wasn't vegan when I had my children. I was consistently moving towards a vegan diet throughout the sort of 3 pregnancies, and immediately after having my 3rd child was when I knocked out the dairy, which was one of the last things to go for me. And so I was sort of, that made me quite emotional, thinking about, our worlds are obviously really toxic these days. There's all sorts of things, but that's one thing that's so easy to avoid just by going vegan. You can cut out a huge, really nasty chemical that's going to be very persistent in your body and that you're going to pass on to your children just by going vegan. So that's one of the reasons why I would encourage everyone, particularly if you're looking at wanting to have children, or you're currently pregnant, or you're currently nursing, or you're raising children, definitely consider a vegan diet, because it knocks out a huge part of chemical toxicity and overload in your system that affects so many processes in your body and in the bodies of your growing children. So that's one of the reasons why I would suggest considering a plant-based diet if you're a woman, or a family. And for me, it's been an easy process with regards to raising my children on a vegan diet. And one of my friends about 12 months ago transitioned to a vegan diet as well, and she's got 3 young children. And apparently one of the things that sort of other friends of hers will say to her is that, oh gosh, but if I went vegan, my kids wouldn't eat anything. And I guess by that they're meaning, their diet is very heavily meat-based, or they drink a lot of milk, or they eat a lot of cheese, and so therefore they think that they don't like their veggies, that sort of thing. But what my friend found was that when she transitioned to a plant-based diet, the kids' palates exploded. All that was on offer was fruits and veggies and other plants, and so they just started eating more. Your kids aren't going to starve themselves. They will, if that's all that's on offer, they will start to experiment, and their palates will expand. And within 3 weeks, the taste buds will have changed, and they'll start to explore new flavors, new textures. I guess some people potentially would have difficulties with that if they've got kids that are on the spectrum, or other sorts of dietary challenges with regards to change and transitions and things like that. But every problem has a solution. You just need to find it. And once you've committed to it, it becomes a much easier process. And so that's probably all that I wanted to talk about today. I guess actually one other thing that I'll mention is I said earlier that I was sort of gradually transitioning to a more and more plant-based diet throughout my 3 pregnancies. So when I fell pregnant and grew my first child, I was still eating a fairly standard diet, although very much whole foods based. And that pregnancy was the one where I had the most nausea. I wasn't a person that had really difficult pregnancies, but I did get quite nauseous, particularly in the mornings or during the night during that pregnancy. And I was eating a lot of dairy products. I was having eggs with cream, scrambled eggs with cream most mornings for breakfast during that pregnancy. Then, before I fell pregnant with my second child, I started exploring the vegan diet more and was really interested in raw vegan, and I started increasing how much fruit I was eating and changing my diet in that direction. And the second pregnancy was a lot easier in that regard. I hardly had any nausea at all. I got a little bit of travel sickness, but other than that I felt great. And my second child was born at home. It was a really easy natural birth. So my first child was born in a birth centre. That was still a textbook labour. I was under 6 hours, certainly very intense, but no complications or issues. And then my second labour, I guess my body was a lot healthier, and I also knew what to expect, and everything knows what to do by that stage as well. It was an hour and 45 minutes, and Rome was born at home. And then between the second and the third pregnancy, I was again transitioning more and more towards a plant-based diet, eliminating more animal products from my diet. And the third pregnancy was a breeze. I had almost no problems at all, certainly no nausea. I was a little tired, but I had 2 young ones to run after and around at that stage. So they certainly were keeping me busy, but that was really the only sort of downside of the third pregnancy. And then the third labour was just blissful. It was almost an ecstatic birth 45 minutes, and a really beautiful, peaceful experience. And I do attribute a lot of that not just to luck or genes or all of those things, but to a commitment to a healthy lifestyle that involved not only an awareness and sort of conscious choices around what I was putting into my body, but also fitness and keeping myself fit and healthy during the pregnancy as well, because basically, you know, labour is like running a marathon. You know, it's a pretty intense time, so you do want to be as fit as you possibly can for that. So yeah, all of the other typical sort of afflictions that can occur during pregnancy, like gestational diabetes, blood pressure issues, fluid retention, all of those kinds of things weren't an issue for me. My diet was very low in salt and very hydrating by the third pregnancy particularly, so I didn't have any issues with fluid, you know, big heavy ankles and those kinds of things. So that's a nice little overview, I think, for now. It's really an easy thing to do. It's not a challenging time to be vegan. In the Western world, we have an abundance of choices available to us. There is so much information out there these days about the downsides of a diet that's based in animal products compared to a diet that's plant-based. And so I encourage you to start looking into that. Do your research. Definitely, if you're wanting to have children, or you're currently pregnant or lactating, or you're raising a family, look into it. I strongly encourage you to start looking into it now, because the sooner you do, the less chemical contaminants are going to be going into your body and your children's bodies, and therefore the healthier they will be, both in the short term and in the long term. You're going to set them up for a much better life. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed that topic, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.